Welcome back everyone, it is Mike from ManaHoarders. In this video we are bringing you a commander deck tech for a Golgari commander, Slimefoot the Stowaway. You can cast Slimefoot for 1, a black and a green. You get a 2/3 legendary fungus. The text reads, whenever a sapling you control dies, Slimefoot deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain a life. You can also pay 4 to create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. Before we dive into the deck, let's go over a few key points. First up, the final price for this build came in at $76.10. It does include the price of our commander and all of our lands. Now do bear in mind these prices will vary greatly depending on the quality of the cards you purchase, the vendor you use, and a variety of other factors. In terms of power level, I rate this deck around a 5 out of 10 on the power scale. Our commander is able to create tokens, and we also have other ways to get some more saplings on the board. Now once we do, we are going to be using a bit of an aristocrat style here, as using our commander's first ability can deal damage to our opponents, and we also have a few other cards that deal damage to our opponents when our creatures die. And we have a few cards that allow us to sacrifice our saplings to draw cards and generate value in other ways. Now let's go ahead and dive into the deck. First up are our enchantments. We have a Bastion of Remembrance. Whenever it enters, we get a 1/1 white human soldier creature token, and whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent loses 1 and we gain 1. Fists of Ironwood. Whenever it enters, we get 2 saplings. It also gives the enchanted creature trample. Fungal Plots. We can pay 1 of the green, exile a creature from our graveyard to create a 1/1 green sapling. We can also sacrifice 2 saplings to gain a life and draw a card. Gift of Doom gives our enchanted creature Death Touch and Indestructible. We can also morph it by sacrificing a creature. Golgari Germination. Whenever a non-token creature we control is put into a graveyard from play, we get a 1/1 green sapling. Mind Slash can do a lot of work. For 1 black, we can sack a creature. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. We choose a card from it, and that player discards that card, but we can only activate this at sorcery speed. Necrogenesis. For 2, we can exile target creature from a graveyard, and we get a 1/1 sapling. With Night Soil, we can pay 1, remove 2 creatures from any graveyard from the game, and we get a 1/1 sapling. Phyrexian Reclamation allows us to pay 2 life to return target creature card from our graveyard back to our hand. And Vampiric Rites, we can pay 1 in the black, sack a creature, gain a life, draw a card. We mustn't forget Verdant Embrace. The enchanted creature gets +3/+3, and at the beginning of each upkeep, we get a 1/1 sapling. And Wilderness Reclamation, at the beginning of our end step, we can untap all lands we control. Moving on to our sorceries. Bone Splinters, we can sack a creature to destroy target creature. Cultivate lets us get a land on the battlefield tapped, and 1 into our hand. With Fertile Imagination, we can choose the card type, then the target opponent reveals his or her hand, and we get 2 saplings for each card they reveal of the chosen type. Fungal Sprouting, we get X saplings, where X is the greatest power among creatures we control. Gruesome Fate makes each opponent lose 1 life for each creature we control. With enough tapped creatures, Harvest Season can allow us to get a bunch of basics from our library onto the battlefield tapped. To deal with those pesky flyers, we have Hurricane. It deals X damage to each creature with flying and each player. Mutual Destruction allows us to sack a creature to destroy a creature. Rampant Growth lets us get a basic from our library onto the battlefield tapped, and then we shuffle. Reprocess, we can sacrifice any number of artifacts, creatures, and or lands, and then draw a card for each permanent sacrifice this way. Sapling Migration allows us to generate some sapling tokens, and Sapling Symbiosis allows us to get a sapling on the battlefield for each creature we control. Sign in Blood allows target player to draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. With Skull Tap, we can sacrifice a creature to draw 2 cards. And Spontaneous Germination, we get a 1/1 sapling for each card in our hand. Moving on to our instants. Altar's Reap, we can sacrifice a creature to draw 2 cards. Blinding Fog prevents all combat damage will be dealt this turn, and creatures we control gain hexproof. Costly Plunder, we can sacrifice a creature or artifact to draw 2 cards. Fog prevents all combat damage. Fungal Infection, target creature gets -1/-1, and we get a sapling. Fungal Rebirth, we can return target permanent from our graveyard to our hand, and if a creature died this turn, we get 2 1/1 saplings. Golgari Charm can give all creatures -1/-1. We can destroy target enchantment, or we can regenerate each creature we control. Harrow allows us to sacrifice a land, search our library for up to 2 basic lands, and then put them onto the battlefield before we shuffle. Scatter the Seeds, we can convoke it to create 3 green sapling creature tokens. Second Harvest allows us to create a token for each token we control. Village Rites, we can sack a creature to draw 2. Vona's Hunger, it has Ascend, and its ability reads, each opponent sacrifices a creature. If we have the city's blessing instead, they each sacrifice half the creatures he or she controls, rounded up. Moving on to our creatures, we do have some legends helping out our commander. Namata Grove Guardian allows us to create more saplings, and if we sacrifice a sapling, all saplings get 1/1 until end of turn. Renata Call to the Hunt, each creature we control enters with an additional 1/1 counter on it. Sir Conrad the Grim, whenever another creature dies or a creature is put into the graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves our graveyard, Sir Conrad deals 1 damage to each opponent. Verdiloth the Ancient gives saplings and treefolk we control +1/+1, and whenever it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, we get X 1/1 green saplings. And moving on to our not-so-legendary creatures, an aristocrat-style deck would not be complete without Butcher of Malakir. Whenever Butcher of Malakir or another creature we control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. We have Deathbloom Thallid. Whenever it dies, we get a sapling. Death Spore Thallid. At the beginning of our upkeep, it gets a spore counter. We can remove 3 spore counters to make a Saproling. We can also sacrifice a Saproling to give target creature -1/-1. Demon of Catastrophes. We can get a 6/6 creature with flying and trample for 4 mana just by sacrificing a creature. With Emrakul's Evangel, we can tap it, sacrifice it, and any number of other non-Eldrazi creatures we control. Then we can put a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature token on the battlefield for each creature sacrificed this way. Jade Mage allows us to pay 2 and a green to generate more Saprolings. Michaeloth has Devour 2, which means as it enters the battlefield, we can sacrifice any number of creatures, then the creature enters the battlefield with twice as many 1/1 counters on it. It also reads, at the beginning of our upkeep, we create a 1/1 green Saproling for each 1/1 counter on Michaeloth. Nadir's Nightblade. Whenever a token we control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 and we gain 1. Nezumi Bone Reader. We can pay a black, sacrifice a creature, and make target player discard a card, but we can only do this at sorcery speed. Null Mage Shepherd allows us to tap 4 untapped creatures we control, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Poison Tip Archer. Whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Psychotrope Thallid. We included it mostly for the ability to pay 1 mana, sacrifice a Saproling, and draw a card. Spore Crown Thallid is a lord. It pumps up each of our funguses and Saprolings. Spore Mound. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, we get a 1/1 Saproling. Tender Shoot Dryad. At the beginning of each upkeep, we get a Saproling and it has Ascend. As long as we have the city's blessing, Saprolings we control get +2/+2. Thallid Soothsayer. We can play 2, sacrifice a creature, and draw a card. Thelanite Hermit gives Saprolings we control +1/+1, and whenever it's turned face up, we get 4 Saprolings. Utopia Mycon. We include it for the ability to generate more Saprolings, and we can sacrifice the Saprolings to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. Vindictive Vampire. Whenever another creature we control dies, the vampire deals 1 damage to each opponent, and we gain a life. And Yavimaya Safford will enter and create a 1/1 green Saproling. And Zulaport Cutthroat. Whenever Zulaport or another creature we control dies, each opponent loses 1 and we gain 1. And last but not least is our mana base. We are keeping things very basic with 18 basic forests and 17 basic swamps. And just like that, we reached the end of this Commander deck tech. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and leave a comment down below. Let us know what commanders you would like to see us build around in the future. We really appreciate your support.